Welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. My name is Peter Howard at Pierre Howdy on Twitter and Threads and everywhere else you need an at. This is a live show we do every Wednesday from 9:30 till we run out of comments or get really tired and go to bed, usually, hopefully before midnight, guys. Please, maybe once. Tonight I'm joined by Zach Reed from the Dynasty Dummies podcast and Fantasy Cares this year. You might have seen him over there quite a bit with his rookie notes. And we talk about anything Dynasty fantasy football related or just fantasy football related. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, trade ideas, or notes, I guess, that you want to throw out, or you're coming back from some feedback we gave you on your league and you want to tell us how bad it was, drop all of that in whatever comment box, whatever streaming platform you happen to be watching us on. I think we're on 2. Although apparently now Twitter also is back to having a stream, according to the symbols in the corner, also on Twitter again. Although I thought that didn't work anymore, but that's cool. And whatever comment box they allow you, put it all in there. We do it democratically. This is just a fancy way of saying it. I read it in the order in which it turns up in the queue, that it filters in from those different sites. There's no real way to skip that. I have had people donate, and I think it's with the idea that we'll read that comment first. But we're remarkably unwilling to change what doesn't work. So we just keep reading it in order. Thank you for any donations you give. There's just no we'll skip to you kind of a deal. We're just here to talk with anyone that wants to talk about fantasy football or Dynasty fantasy football on a Wednesday night, because that's kind of our jam. Let's go see Zach. Hey, Zach, how's it going?
It's not bad. It's not bad. We're here. We're grinding. There are people in the chat already. It's Wednesday.
Inside baseball, but this is a third day in a row I get to talk with Zach late at night about fantasy football, and it's been a pretty good week for me in that regard. Doing those league breakdown shows has been it's unintended benefit, should we say.
Some people would use a different word there. It's the third day in a row you've had to podcast with me, but what I get to is fine.
Right.
Like I appreciate that.
I'll stick with get to. That's fine. We actually have some comments straight away. That's nice. Back to the in-season kind of grind here. Just like Zach Ertz, 23.01 and a 2 tight end premium. That's just a statement of fact, Genji. I actually normally end up with Ertz or Hooper or Jimmy Graham, the old guys, because they can still catch touchdowns. Frankly, that's normally my back of the draft strategy, especially if there's any kind of bump to tight end. So I appreciate the idea. Plus, easy drop week 3. Frank in the chat, why do we give Bryce Young a free pass from last year, but not Will Levis? Because Will Levis was worse. As a prospect and then in season, maybe. And I don't think Bryce Young's getting a pass. He's tanked considerably in value. He's like QB. I looked it up. It's QB what? 20? Did I say 18?
I was going to say he's got to be like early to mid 20s at this point. So
he was being drafted 133rd overall before last season, and now he's being drafted 208. So I wouldn't say we're giving him a pass. He's dropped significantly in value. That's per DLF, by the way.
And Frank, I think too, like your next comment is, I understand Bryce was a first pick, but believing in pick value over what our eyes tell us is what got people in trouble with Trey Lance. Also believing in evaluation and talent over, and again, I don't think Will Levis is bad. I think Will Levis is fine, but I think the people that are looking at Will Levis and seeing the big arm and running out Josh Allen, like that's just wild to me. It's the same thing that happened this year with Drake May, where people are running this out like Drake May is Josh Allen because he can throw the ball far, and that's not how this actually works. And Bryce Young has fallen a ton, and the kind of hanging your hope on it is, he is the starter. He was the starter last year. That they are at least trying to improve things around him. And I think things have improved around Will Levis too. So it's not to say that this is a bet, but they're both were below 60% passers, like completion percentage. They both were really similar in their interception rate. Will Levis had the first game where he threw his three of his first 7 passes went for touchdowns, and everyone was all excited. And he threw 4 touchdowns in that game, and it's great. But he threw 8 touchdowns in 9 games and had that big game in the first one, and everyone kind of remembers that. So it's not. I don't know that it's necessarily we're pushing Will Levis down and giving Bryce Young a pass. I think they both need to prove it, because neither of them did. But the collective consciousness of Dynasty still says Bryce Young has a better chance of proving it, because we've seen Bryce Young do it, as opposed to what we've seen from Will Levis in college and going forward. Also, the final point I will say is, even though Bryce Young is not a running quarterback, he is a mobile quarterback. And go look at the rushing statistics between Will Levis and Bryce Young. And I know Levis only played in or started 9 games last year, and Young had 16. But if you go take Will Levis's rushing totals and you can multiply them by any number you want until you get to 10, above 10, and Bryce Young is going to outdo him. So that matters for fantasy too. Just that little bit of rushing upside matters too. And I don't know if everybody's looking at that. Well, Bryce Young does have the ability to scramble. I mean, he ran for 200 and change, 250 yards or something. Not great, but again, just that little additional thing that Levis doesn't have.
All right, I want to see a bunch of stuff in a row. I don't like to monologue, but I seem prone to it. And this kind of format kind of leans to it. So I want to see a few things. Number one, Dynasty Outhouse just retweeted our link, so he knows we're live. I'm just going to point that kind of stuff out. He definitely knows. He has access. He knows. 2, Frank. Both here in person, in real life, and on Twitter, I have a similar problem in that the way I kind of think out loud. That's kind of how I process. And I have an accent, and I'm a nasal little bitch. And so I quite often come across as condescending. I want you to know that it's not intended that way. If it ever comes across that way as you, screw everyone else in the world. You, me, you, and Frank in the chat. That's all I really care about, because you're someone willing to spend a Wednesday night talking with me. Honestly, you're like my best friend right now. And so it's with that intent that I'm talking at you, because this format kind of lends to it. It's not at you. I'm just talking. This is the only way I have of communicating with you. And I have this crappy nasally way of voice and this way of thinking. So please take it as it's intended. But both you and Zach are doing very interesting things about analyzing and evaluating a situation. And we could talk about how the draft capital still matters, or how the prospect profiles are quantifiably different. And that's why one's ranked above the other, even though one is trending down and the other has. I checked it out a little bit just now on Keep Trade Cut and DLF. DLF's kind of slow, so occasionally I use what I think is a worse site, but is meant to be more up to date, like Keep Trade Cut, just to check. And he's about stable on Keep Trade Cut, Will Levis, and he's about stable in ADP, even though it works a month behind, which I thought was interesting. And even when I checked out the ranks, like Superflex rankers are more up to date, or meant to be, because we can update anytime we want, just inside baseball there. But we could update right now. If you ever get frustrated with those dates, the last time we updated, it's entirely within our control. I'm just saying. Even there's like a 10 QB positional rank difference. But I would say Levis is more stable, whereas Bryce Young is tanked. And so what I want to take away, instead of discussing all of that really interesting football stuff, is the main way I play fantasy is to think about someone as good at fantasy and as invested to be on the fucking Dynasty grind on a Wednesday night in July. Like, you're pretty invested to be thinking about Will Levis and Bryce Young in this way. It's really interesting to me to take away, because I see a lot of Will Levis talk in my little bubble on Twitter and in Dynasty outside of Twitter as well. Well, like Will Levis is a topic of conversation. I see Jetpack Galileo posting clips. I don't watch them to keep the brand alive, but I know he is posting clips, and that gets me excited because Jetpack Galileo is fun and funny, and I like both of those things, and tends to be a pretty good evaluator, and he doesn't see completely terrible things in Levis. But what I'm saying is there is hype around Levis. What I'm saying is it's easier to trade Will Levis now than it was a month ago. It's harder to trade Bryce Young now than it was 3 months ago, certainly towards the start of the season. So your feelings on this matter reversed. And so what I see, Frank, is that we got to remember that while we joke about being on trains and being on the boats and I'm in the Will Levis camp, whatever, they're all fictional, and you're actually alone just with your little Dynasty roster, me, you, and everyone. And so instead, the way I typically think about fantasy, or in this kind of question, is just take an aside. And someone who wants to be in on this argument is thinking in this way. It's kind of the psychology of Dynasty, which is typically more Zach Reed and Leo Pasiga way of thinking about Dynasty, but this is where my process interacts with it. So you think Will Levis is buried and Bryce Young is overvalued, but the values are trending in the exact opposite directions. And Will Levis is a topic of conversation and more easy to trade right now. Now, I'm not saying Will Levis is a bad bet for this year. He had a cannon as a prospect and wasn't a terrible prospect. He was just kind of meh. He's like the No, he's not as bad as Bo Nix. Like a Michael Penix prospect this year with slightly less draft capital, but already started games and already has a starter gig waiting for him in 2024. So definitely not a bad roster, and especially as ADP or whatever his value is right now, it's probably fair. But people that like him think everybody else is against him. That's kind of what I'm getting from you, and not just you, from others, which means, as an aside, as a guy trying to remember that there aren't camps and there aren't trains, and if it doesn't work out, you're just stuck with whichever player you go with. There's a value window on Will Levis right now. And while Will Levis is a perfectly fine roster at ADP or for whatever trades you get, if there's a Will Levis guy in my league, that means now is a really great time to trade for him at a very fair, reasonable value because it's possible and interesting. Just accept there's a range of outcomes, and I don't know the future. That's kind of what my main thought was when I read your first two comments here, and I see you commenting, and I'll get back, and we'll get back to you, and you can tell me why I'm stupid and condescending, and anything you want to say, I'll take it. But that's what occurs to me with your comments. There are Will Levis guys out there. I mean, if Jetpack Galileo is talking about them, the pretty substantial evaluators is talking about Will Levis, and I'm probably going to find a couple of my leagues, and they're in a train. They're on a camp. They want to show the world. They won't trade me 1 million first-round picks, but it means because there's a range of outcomes, this is a very comfortable trade window if I have Will Levis. Whereas if I have Bryce Young, or the person who has Bryce Young in my league, it's in the exact opposite situation, especially because of comments or thoughts like this. And so depending on what the trade offers are, I would actually explore or be interested in considering those range of outcomes and say, because this is where the hype and the thought process is in those certain trains and camps, that the opposite might be viable for a lot of teams because that's just the way. And we herd towards ideas. And I think right now we're probably herding towards Will Levis being undervalued and herding towards Bryce Young being overvalued, which probably means in a lot of leagues, approaching it the opposite way could really work out because there's a range of outcomes. I think Young sucked last year, despite the draft capital and despite the better prospect profile. And we can blame coaches and all the other excuses, but he just didn't do as well as I thought he should in his first year. So I'm lower on him, but I'm not seeing 0% or chance that he can be, something good, or at least even as good as I thought he possibly could. And if the value is going in opposite directions because of trains and camps and off-season talk, that's interesting to me as well. I'm not trading for a lot of Bryce Young, don't get me wrong. I'm just also not thinking that going into my leagues trying to get Will Levis is a great idea if the hype is already there. It depends on the trade, always. If you're getting him for seconds, he's the starting quarterback this year. Pretty cool, especially in the Superflex, obviously. And there is upside. There's a range of outcomes, and one of those range of outcomes is at least Ryan Tannehill, and he's been pretty good after moving and finding a new team. And it was a wild journey, but Will Levis could get there too in terms of fantasy. So yeah, I'm not dismissing that at all. And that's reasonable value. That's fine. But again, what occurs to me mostly right now is I see what you're saying. I don't see what you're arguing against in my dynasty life. I think people rostering Bryce Young are pretty more desperate, whereas people rostering Will Levis are more exciting, which means I might find the opposite to be true if I was looking to go in either direction in dynasty. I'm not. I'm trading for Dak Prescott. I'm trading for Justin Herbert. I'm trading for Kyler Murray. Those are kind of my targets. I don't go discount QB shopping a lot because I kind of have to see it before I believe it, because I believe quarterback evaluation. And to your and Zach's point, like, you are also talking about believing your eyes. Like, I don't believe my eyes at all. I don't even watch. But especially at quarterback, there's very few people I would trust. Especially to predict the future, not because they're not good or you're not good, but because frankly no one gets it right consistently, like at a 50% rate, even the ones that I would vaguely trust. Like, it's a really hard position, especially to trust your eyes with, I think. I mean, NFL teams are wasting first round picks on Bryce Young, to your point. So yeah, that's what occurs to me mostly. That's mainly my takeaway from my teams and what I would apply any of this to in Dynasty. It's that I think exploring the opposite in some leagues, if I was playing Dynasty in a way where they were interesting targets one way or the other, I would take the opposite away, because I think, despite this might be all perfectly true, but the values say different. Young's trending down. The hype's definitely cooling. Whereas Levis is the exact opposite, as far as I can tell, in my leagues for my dynasty experience. Now, if you find the opposite, then the opposite is true. Again, I don't like the monologue. I just seem prone to it. Apologies for that, everyone. Zach, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I want to take like an astral projection point away from what Frank's saying. Like, all of that, yeah, cool. But like, I think in actual leagues, the opposite is true. Levis is growing and Young is down, which means, as someone trying not to believe I'm in a camp because they don't exist, the opposite might be more interesting. That's basically it.
Well, and I think that's part of the phenomenon that you see with when you have a great player who all of a sudden becomes a good player, and the community runs like down past it, and they just are done. I mean, like the Mike Evans thing. Mike Evans has been undervalued now for 3 years because for the first 6 years of his career, he was overvalued. Like, people were taking him as a top 5 wide receiver. Well, so people were taking him as a top 5.
I got so much hate for that.
And he had one season where he was the wide receiver 3, and that was great, and it paid off that season. But now, he's like a half a step down production wise from where he was. And now all of a sudden he's barely a top 24 wide receiver. And so we run by this. And I think the same thing holds true with players that we evaluate highly when they don't do what we thought they would do, but they have played. All of a sudden we run completely by. And I think that, like, to your point, is part of what's happening with Bryce Young. Like, people expected him to be in the CJ Stroud echelon, and he didn't even come close. And so now people are, his value has come down, and rightly so. His value has come down, but I think people run past it. And I don't think I think most people shrugged at Levis when he came out, and most people shrugged at Levis last year, and people are still kind of shrugging at Levis. But
that's true. Like, a lot of people are still shrugging. I'm still shrugging. Yeah.
Because we're shrugging at Levis.
There's some truth. Yeah.
But because we're shrugging at Levis and like we have this like really negative idea of Bryce Young because he was here but played here, we think he's down, below that. And so it's a kind of an interesting, like, I don't think Levis has changed very much.
To take Frank's point, Young is still held over Levis, even though they both had terrible seasons because of the draft capital, because of and all the stuff we could say, and you did. But that's true in either like game one. Levis has a positive game. His value obviously escalates. The truth is rah, 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 rah. But there's still that whole shrugging horde that are going to be, I'm still uncomfortable with it. So his value will struggle to get up as high as if Bryce Young has a good game one because everyone's kind of down, but they immediately want to go back in because of the draft capital and the prospect profile. So like a positive game from one or the other, Young would immediately have a better value increase than Levis. And if they both have a positive game, and so it becomes this almost this non-zero sum or the zero sum. I'm not sure what that means, I guess. Affair where playing it out, and you don't have to trade Levis for Young. You can do both, to be fair. I mean, there's no reason that it has to be an either or. But like the range of outcomes of Young is higher because of what Frank is saying here, that Young's being held to a higher value. That will still be true if they both have a positive game. It'll still be true if they both have a negative game. So Young always has this little boost because of what everyone thinks, if you know what I mean. And without having to say, I prefer Young over Levis, you can just know that everyone else does. So you could believe this about Levis, Frank, and go all in on Levis. But also, if you get a chance at Young, you know you can take advantage of them because the minute he has a positive game. And that's kind of what I said at the end of the season. Quarterback value is fairly stable year one to year two, even with a terrible season. Again, Young's dropped, but to your point, he's still significantly higher over other starters in their second season because of his prospect profile and draft capital. And all you need is a value window to immediately have a better turnaround than doing anything with him this offseason. So you could look for that as well while still being a Levis guy. That's kind of, again, it's just how I think about Dynasty these days. It's not this guy, that guy. It's what does that guy think about this guy, that guy. Does that make sense? I don't know. I think it's an interesting comparison there, Frank.
Welcome to the psychological side of Dynasty, Peter. There's plenty of room over here.
Genji, Kyler Bajon, AJ Brown, Tank, JT, Rice, Kenneth Walker, Will Levis, Deontay Johnson, Benson, not Tajay Spears, Wicks, fifth round out for my head, Jerome Ford, Sam Darnold, Greg Dulcich, just to make Zach happy because I always say that one wrong. How'd I do? Oh, rate the draft kind of a thing. 2-point tight end premium, Superflex 12 team. You didn't exploit tight end enough in that format, but I'm guessing because that's the way the draft fell to you. As far as the order goes, it looks like you got pretty good value on JT after Tank. It was great. It's probably too high on Tank, but definitely a great pick to get JT 1, 2, 3, like fifth round. That's fantastic. Rice is okay. Kenneth Walker is good, assuming these are draft rounds. Will Levis is decent. You're a little weak at quarterback. You're really top heavy because Kyler's great. And then you've got Mr. Levis, who, again, has a positive range of outcomes, but I expect Tannehill to be his ceiling. And I don't think you exploited tight end enough, my personal way of drafting. But every team looks good after a draft as long as you don't, and not entirely unaware of value. And you're clearly not. This team looks fine. It looks really good in that format. It's just the way I draft, I try and preference those 1Z or in the Superflex 2Z positions a little bit more, but you've managed to walk away with better wide receivers and running backs by not doing that. So your team still looks really good. I think you drafted several below ADP, actually. Got some really great values. And yeah, again, every team after a draft looks really hot. And so does this one. Zach, what do you think?
Well, and you buried the lead where Ray Davis, Kamani Vidal, and Eric All also were.
Neat.
But no, yeah. I'm the same way. Where if I see a 2-point tight end premium, the tight ends are going to be my quarterback room. Like that's just kind of how I play, and I think you'll find that they end up scoring. So the Laportas, the Kelseys, the Hawkinsons, the Kittles. Even like McBride, Evan Ingram is very sneaky that way. They're gonna score like mid first round like mid top 12 quarterbacks or high top 24 quarterbacks, and you're gonna be a lot happier because you're gonna be able to get them a little further down. But not a bad. What do you got?
No, speaking of which, I do mean to record my own podcast at some point, gentlemen. I keep doing other stuff, but I'm going to break down the tight end position, so I'm a little into that research, and it's a really interesting top 5 breakout year for tight end. Top 5 is difficult to track, not my podcast right here, right now, but it's such a small group. But one thing I have noted is we're kind of due more. For tight end, it's really weird to call them unusual because they happen pretty consistently after the 3rd year. Smaller percentage, but very consistently 3rd, 4th, 5th year. We'll hit about 13% in terms of the percentage of top 5 breakouts that happened in the 3rd year, in the 4th year, and the 5th year. So it's a weird position breakout wise, and it's a small group to actually target, so it's difficult with my process. But one thing that does stand out is 2nd year breakouts. While it's a good year for those too, and they've been a little bit more consistent to happen when they should. We get about one every year, one every other year, and we've been doing that. Whereas breakouts in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, the old times haven't been happening, even though they're about as consistent. We've had back-to-back years without that happening. And so I've been just briefly scanning potential breakouts, trying to exploit the tight end position where I can. And the ones that stand out to me, well, Pat Fairmouth, you've mentioned a lot, Zach, and I already roster him everywhere, so that's not great for me. But I think Greg Dulcich missing a year last year is interesting. But also like Jake Ferguson, dirt cheap as far as Dynasty goes, had a really solid year last year, but he's entering his 3rd year, and that actually makes him slightly more interesting just in terms of trends. Yeah. And there are a couple others, but sorry, you just got me back thinking about that. I've only briefly glanced at it, getting ready for that podcast, but since you're in a 2 tight end premium league, I thought I'd try and throw something at you. It's a start 11. You've even got 11 starters here, so that's pretty cool. SFB scoring was announced today. I haven't seen it. I have to talk about it. I'm guessing let's talk. We don't have to talk about it after all. Look at me correcting someone else's misspellings. The turns have tabled. What's your division draft slot? How do you feel about the tight end scoring in comparison to the running backs and wide receivers? I haven't actually looked at the scoring, so it's going to be difficult for me. And my draft slot, I think I selected a late draft slot. That's usually what I go for on Scott Fishbowl, so I have an excuse. But also, I like the turn. I really do. And I'm meant to be doing the Cincinnati live draft, so the scoring will be whatever the sleeper scoring is, which I'm aware is slightly different sometimes, especially around the kickers. Have you seen the Scott Fishbowl scoring?
I have not. So the fact that things get dropped on Wednesday is really tough for me because I go from work right into doing baseball practice and then cooking dinner and then getting the kids ready for bed. So I haven't done anything yet in terms of looking and seeing what went on with Fantasy Cares or the Scott Fishbowl scoring. I will. That'll be a tomorrow thing, but I haven't seen it yet. And as far as division draft slot, I am in the Boston Live. I am in the Will Hunting division. How do you like them apples? And I have the 107 because it was what was left after years.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened.
Well, so after years of being beaten down and being sniped by me from the 101, Mike Fiella was like, "Nope, I'm going to get in first and take the 101." So I ended up mid round just to see how that shakes out. So we'll
I will
see.
say I do have a draft sheet that I tend to use off and on when doing startup drafts, and I tend to apply Scott Fishbowl scoring to it and go back through it and try to publish that for everyone. The few little things that I use in a draft, play ADP so you have a draft board, and then break down positional scoring to show you who's doing what where. When I get to it, I'll have some better ideas of the scoring, but because I literally haven't seen it. Sorry. Brain burst. I literally was work early hours and I got home 30 minutes ago, so I missed all of that. But I'm excited to look. I'm also excited that Kuda Doodle just spoke to us. I'm just saying, like,
she's the best.
She really is. Very excited. Nice to see you, Kuda. Frank in the chat. Recently asked about Levis. I heard Levis for a Lad McConkey trade. And it just seems like the hate has gone a bit too far on Levis. In a super flex, yeah, that's a little. He's a starter this year. I'd probably take Levis in that deal. I'm not a huge Lad guy, though. I think Zach prefers Lad a little bit more to me.
I mean, whatever.
Just a little. I mean, we're fairly close, but
yeah. I mean, I don't know that I'm a Lad McConkey guy either. We had the conversation, Peter, where we both agreed that he was like super mid, but he ends up in a fairly good landing spot for and good draft
what
capital.
We'll go with. I think he's talented. I think he's got skills, and I think that displays on his per touch kind of per reception, per rep kind of stats. He's mid in terms of a prospect when you're a fantasy player looking for a guy who earns volume and dominates in volume, and he was a wide receiver 3 or 4 behind very
Bowers
prospects, several who came out and not. That's the thing though. He wasn't just behind Bowers. He was often behind other wide receivers on that depth chart in terms of volume. Which again doesn't say everything, but when you're chasing fantasy points, that's kind of my main thing. Like, does this guy show an ability to earn volume? And if you can't in college, it's less likely to do in the NFL. But he was drafted, did get a great landing spot, and on a per touch basis, yeah, I definitely see why people like him. So I don't know if he's mid, but as a prospect profile, it ends up balancing into yeah.
Well, but I think everyone is looking at him and thinking, oh, there's going to be the Keenan Allen, because they look at him and they say he's just like Cooper Kupp, or he's just like
Keenan Allen's a hot target.
Well, yeah, but he also is not like, people look at Lad McConkey and they see literally see white guy, and they're like, he is a slot receiver. It's not what he did. That's not what he does. Like, so whatever, but no, like I don't think that getting Lad McConkey, I've seen sneak into the first round. If Lad McConkey's a first rounder to you and you want to take Lad McConkey for Will Levis, like, I don't think getting a first round pick for Will Levis is bad business. But I don't think Lad McConkey is a first round pick. And so, that's not something that I am personally doing. Like,
yeah, I'm just reading my notes on him real quick. You're absolutely right. He was not a slot guy. He was low ADOT, but he was also low slot. Like, he was playing a low amount of slot snap. So he's not even. And I thought we hated slot guys. I'm the one that's meant to like slot guys, which is probably why I'm not huge on Lad. But yeah, Lad's interesting. We're not completely tanking Lad. Again, landing spot and what he did when he got the ball, very impressive. So that's always good. But yeah, probably I think you're right there. The value on Levis is a little off.
He's probably cusp. Well, he's probably cusp first round anyway. For like McConkey, I think like once you get down past the 10, so you got Williams, Jaden Daniels, Harrison, Malik Nick. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not trying to talk over you. I'm muttering to myself. It's a thing I do. Carry on. I'll mute.
No, it's fine. Like, but he's probably, once you get past Brian Thomas at 10, it's Brooks and Benson and McConkey, and then the quarterbacks that kind of remind you of Will Levis and Penix and Nix, and so I don't think that's that far off, Frank. I'd like to tell you it is. If Levis is fantastic, which I don't think he is. I think he's good. I think he's fine. But I don't mind getting a first round pick for Will Levis. I mind more that the first round pick now is Lad McConkey, because I think that Lad McConkey is less valuable than the pick slot that he's drafted at, because I think you're in kind of the pick'em place there. Once you get past, Brian Thomas and Jonathan Brooks, I think that there are maybe 9 players that could go anywhere in any order. So,
yeah, I just lean the running backs in that range. I just looked up. He's 13th overall in Superflex rookie rankings. Apparently, rookie ADP. Yeah, this is rankings. So yeah, he's that cusp of the first, and the players, like you say, after Brian Thomas I'd probably go Brooks. I'd probably go Benson. I'd probably just lean the running backs at that point. But Levis would be perfectly fine in that range. I've literally, and I'd lean the quarterback. I've literally been on a live stream with you, Pierre. I know. I've never. I know you're never condescending. I'm actually very I'm not condescending to people, but I get that I come across as condescending. It's
Peter's
me.
the worst.
I just accept it at this point in my life. I'm not trying to condescend. I don't consider myself above literally anyone, but that's the way I process and think and talk. Even on Twitter, I come across that way to a lot of people. I'm like, I'm going to own it, but yeah, I wasn't. Just if it matters to you. In a 12-team Superflex 1 PPR start 10, Stroud, Cousins, Russ, Gino, Gibbs, A-Chain, Chase. I'm Ross St. Brown, AJ Brown, Puka, Lockett, commit. Would you take JT Waddle for Chase or ASRB? No, I keep Chase. Maybe AS. Maybe Amon-Ra. We're in a wide receiver bubble, and that gives me like Waddle isn't that far away for me, and I know he isn't for you either. He's lower because last year sucked, but he's had that level in the NFL of production, that top 12 level. That was a rookie year, I think. Like that's hot, and JT's a solid ad. Not for Chase, maybe Amon-Ra, but I probably still keep Amon-Ra, but it's pretty close. To add JT, that's pretty nice.
I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is really close to that top.
He's in it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he can't be because then there'd be four.
No, wait. No, like he's in that Lamb tier, like just below the triumvirate, as you say.
I have Lamb in the like.
To me, it's close.
To me, it's Jefferson, Chase, Lamb, St. Brown. Like they're all right there to me.
Yeah, I go back.
Amon-Ra St. Brown averaged almost 21 points a game last year in fantasy.
I was looking at it again.
He's legit.
I was looking at it again with that value formula. I was like, God, CeeDee Lamb did well last year. It's good to see. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, we've been on for a minute. We love the slot guys. It's normally everyone else who hates the slot guys.
I have been waiting, and I'm actually. Yeah, well, so I've been waiting for this to like click with both the NFL and with fantasy players, and I'm actually this week going back and listening to Moneyball. But in the NFL, if it's an 80% chance that you complete a 5-yard pass to a slot receiver, and you can do that, twice in a row, that's a first down, which means nobody can stop you unless they completely revamp their defense. And the same thing with fantasy, having a guy who catches 10 balls, even though they're not deep, all of a sudden in PPR, that's super valuable. And not that Amon-Ra St. Brown doesn't, go stretch the field every now and then, but CeeDee Lamb is really a slot guy. St. Brown is really a slot guy. Puka was like the zone killing slot guy this past year with the Rams. AJ Brown is a slot guy. Like this is just kind of what we like. A lot of the high volume players, DJ Moore, like a lot of the high volume players are slots. So I like the Flow Source's next comment though. That's my favorite.
Didn't need to write out my whole team, but why not get Peter to talk more? Because no one wants that, but I appreciate you. Thank you. Frank in the chat. And trust me, I'm not someone who enjoys being the Levis defender, but he's a QB who is top 12 up. You see, you're doing it there again, though.
He's not top 12 upside, though.
No, that's what I mean. Like, that's a statement that sounds reasonable to think about it. Like, I can name 12 quarterbacks right now. I'd be like, wow, really, Levis? It's like the guy writing. Who was that? I pass things on my timeline sometimes, and I know everyone else knows who they are, but I don't. So it hits, I think, better. But some guy saying, if I was drafting right now, of course Patrick Mahomes goes first, but Jordan Love is second, and like fully in on that, and that hit different. That's that level. For me, Levis is fine, but like, would you Tannehill in his prime? The Tannehill, was he top 12? Yeah, he was top 12 season, but I don't think he ever would have said top 12 QB.
He was like 15th, 15th, 15th,
His 15th guy.
15th. Like that was Tannehill. Like if you want a mid quarterback, that was Tannehill.
That's the thing. He was a discount mid quarterback because no one drafted him there. No one wanted
it was like, man, if you
Andy Dalton.
Those were the days where you could get Tannehill and you could get Bortles and you could just crush your league because you got them in like the 12th round, and they put up points. It was gross, but they're
it was gross.
You're super mid quarterbacks in the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th round.
Back
whatever.
when going cheap quarterback was the best meta. Yeah, I remember. I never went Bortles. I just couldn't stomach it. But there was always someone. I mean, the old guys. It was Ben Roethlisberger. You could get for nothing because everyone thought he was gonna quit any second. Anyway, and my high of Kuda actually talking to us goes immediately down because she's calling me out. I appreciate that.
So you're philosophizing. You're there.
I thoroughly enjoy being squished. I just do. Otherwise, why would I do this? Holy cow! 12-team PPR offered Zamir White for Pearsall. I probably want the White. Running backs are Ford, Cook, Austin, Brooks, Lloyd, Warren. A lot of rookies, which isn't bad. Loaded at wide receiver.
If you're competitive,
I'm not high on Pearsall.
Well, I mean, I don't mind Pearsall, but like if you're competitive, take Zamir White. He should score points.
I think he's offered. I would lean White. Pearsall's in that range though, where he's a late first, early second. That seems high for White right now, but I actually think I'm okay with it. That's just the value seems a little off, but I think it's okay. That's what I'm saying.
I hate looking at landing spots, especially with wide receivers. But, and here's the caveat: if there was a spot that Ricky Pearsall could land that he could end up being productive in, it is a Shanahan offense where they look at what you do and like try to utilize that skill set. In that offense, if you put Ricky Pearsall in motion, which is, I mean, that's all he did at Florida, he can be productive. But again, if my team is competitive, if you're saying you're loaded at wide receiver, if you are, marginally competitive with your quarterback situation, your tight end situation, I don't mind adding Zamir White because I think that he is going to be productive in Las Vegas this year. I mean, he's going to be probably a mid-high running back too. Fine. I don't think Pearsall's that, and I think you kind of get out from under a little bit of the risk. Not that there's no risk in a running back, and especially a running back who didn't have great draft capital. But it's pretty obvious to me right now that Zamir White is going to be, the guy carrying the ball.
No one should listen to me about anything. I was curious. It's been a while since I signed back into Dynasty Planet to look at my rostership because I used to be working on that pretty strong, so I could say things about it.
You have 100% Pearsall, don't you?
Nope. I do have 100% someone. Do you want to know my highest rostered wide receiver is? Only on MFL because Sleeper sucks. I've been dragged into some of those leagues, but I'm not signing into that.
Who's that? McConkey or St. Brown?
St. Brown's up there, though. Yeah. It's Bateman.
We hadn't even discussed him tonight. I could have told you that.
I went 100% Bateman last year, and
you never go full Bateman, Peter.
Every single shot you do when you're trading him for thirds. I'm just saying. Last year, third, second for Bateman, that was a decent bet.
You're just lighting picks on fire.
Hold yeah, basically. But second, Kid Coop, evening fellas. 12 teams start 10. Running backs are Spears, Sharp, Corum. All words that are apparently difficult for me to say tonight. Lloyd, with a contending roster, would you trade a late 25-second? You don't know if it's late, but absolutely I would. To add Davis Estime, or wait till the season to grab a running back that's producing. Davis, you can actually get Davis later than that, which is the great thing about Davis. Estime, I would have lower than Davis and tends to go higher, so it's a little conflicting. I would do it for both in a second, but Davis is being grabbed in the third mostly, I think.
Well,
right now.
so
But yeah,
if he's already
I would
got
prefer Davis.
if he's already got Corum and Lloyd on a roster, that my guess is the rookie draft has already happened.
That's a good point.
I don't want to spend a second to go get a third or a fourth round running back right now. To me, that's not good business. If you've got your second, hang on to it and see if you can go get somebody in season that is a 1 year rental or whatever, or go start to look at some of these older running backs. You might be able to get Derrick Henry for a 25 second. I'm not sure he's worth a first. He's probably more than a second, so you may have to finagle, but like something like that where you can get an older running back who has potential to be productive or more productive than what I see Davis or Estime right now.
Yeah, it's just trading a second for a guy who was just probably drafted in the third. Bad business is a good way of saying it. I think Davis is second round. I would have drafted him in the second round if I had to in a rookie draft, but you did. So it's bad business is it.
Throw it at somebody like
Aaron
David
Jones.
Montgomery or
Eckler
Najee
goes for
Harris.
a second really easy.
Eckler, yeah. I'm worried about Eckler. Like he's not. I don't think he's ever Eckler again, but he's like Eckler. So
for
a second. Yeah. No, I do that.
Eckler, Swift, Aaron Jones are usually my go-tos when I'm throwing seconds around for running backs.
Kamara
again. This time of year, that's kind of the running back shopping I'm doing. But in general, wait till the season and try and go higher than that when you know you need them. I mean, you probably know now, like you say, your roster you think is built for it. But it's just the running backs have a landmine after landmine, not landmine, fields of landmines to walk through the offseason. The first big one's a draft. So we got that. But then there's training camp and there's preseason, and literally any day they can get an injury walking down the street. And running back value is very sensitive to that kind of thing. I tend to think of running backs as getting them when you know you need them, like next week kind of a thing. And then you go get Kamara. You go get just Kamara, really. No, Kamara, you go, who actually is an interesting value right now. Or you go get CMC if you're going up. Because you know it's worth spending the value for you because I need them now, not I think I'll need them in a month or 3 months. But that's just me. It depends. Part of that is how you build your roster, to be fair. So it could be opposite for you. Great points, Peter. Thank you, Tacit Assassin 13. I wonder who that guy is. Frank in the chat. Arrow. Kiku, follow-up question. Kincaid is my only tight end, which I think is fine. He's entering his second year. It's most common top 12, and I think top 5 breakout year for tight end. Again, following my research. He's not the one I'm excited about because everyone's thinking of him when they think breakout tight ends, I think, right now. And again, back to I'm looking for something else, but Kincaid's solid roster. Snot is gone. Would you trade a late 25 second and Hyatt for Sanders? The Sanders tight end in this draft? Again, seconds too much. Sanders goes late than that. I'd throw Hyatt literally at anyone for anything. Like, don't get me wrong, but Sanders is being drafted third after 4th round. From what I've seen, again, your draft may have varied, but if he was drafted in the second, I think that's fine. But that was a high pick for Sanders. I think if you're going discount shopping for tight ends to back up Kincaid, they're a very solid idea. Again, approach the tight end position. I think Jake Ferguson is the name that comes to mind, or Greg Dulcich. Both of those pretty easy. A little up, I think Pat Freiermuth. I think he could add something to a second and definitely tempt someone away from Freiermuth right now, and he's a lot more interesting. But again, so it's the value. Who else? Because to you, Zach, am I missing any big names other than going up for Kittle?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty much you're kind of limited to what you've got for tight end names because most of them aren't relevant. The Evan Ingram is always the one, but if he's on a competitive team, you're not going to pull him for cheap. But if he is not on a competitive team, he doesn't have a lot of trade value because people look at him and go, oh, Evan Ingram, he's old and he was great. He was great 1 year and then kind of disappeared. But that's and I do like the Jermaine Burton in the third. Like I like
Burton's
that
good
pick too. Yeah. He is talented enough that he could be the Tyler Boyd replacement this season, which doesn't really move the needle, but gets him on the field. And then depending on what happens with, contract situations and that sort of thing, like I think he's a good player. He reminds me of, and this is all has been my evaluation, my little kind of tagline with Burton is he reminds me of like Tamu Drake London. So he's like Drake London, but like without the hype and maybe like a couple like the corners missing or whatever. But
right. Yeah, and I think Burton's a solid ad in the third. I start to think positionally rookie drafts, especially on any team where I'm not top 3 or so, and then I've usually traded those picks. But in the third round, what I have experienced and looking at ADP, might not be available. Burton's solid, like everything Jack just said. I would thumb up. But I'm grabbing a lot of running backs in the third round. I found Braylon Allen there a few times. Corum's dropped to me there once. A lot of Bucky Irving as well. And Vidal has actually got enough hype that he's sometimes more in the second round, actually. Same with Lloyd. And so in the third round, I'm getting the other running backs in that tier. I'll grab Ray Davis there. I'll grab Corum if he's not gone. I'll grab Braylon Aaron for sure if he's still available. And so I tend to lean the running back in that round. For ideas, you can't show us your entire available draft, but that's what I've been doing in the third.
For me, Burton is kind of the canary in the coal mine. Like I want Burton before those running backs. And I always break ties to running backs, but to me it's Burton, and then all of a sudden you're into the Corum, the Lloyd, the Irving, the Jalen Wright, the Ray Davis. Like so I still want Burton there, even though the running back traditionally is the way I break ties. I still think Burton has that. Again, third round capital, a decent player, a good landing spot, like all those things I like. A lot of the concerns were off field for Burton. And so seeing a team allocate a third round draft pick to go get him says to me we're in and he is going to be at least a piece of our offense going forward. So that's where I'm at, even though, you tend to get the quick points. The running back is kind of the popcorn popper in rookie drafts where like it just kind of happens quick.
I've become so wide receiver reverse because it's a popular thing. Everyone's trying to grab their favorite wide receiver. Not that that's what we're talking about with Burton. I think that's a really solid ad. That's where his ADP's at. He's a very solid prospect and a good landing spot. I mean, what more could you want? That I actually have, like, I've got Burton, Wilson, both solid ads right there if Wilson's available as well. I even have Jatavian Sanders above those wide receivers. My ranks are so wide receiver reverse by the time we get to the third round, probably to my own detriment, because there are some really solid. Again, Burton in the third's great. Wilson in the third would be a great ad too. It's just what's happened to me. This is what Dynasty has done for me. I'm like, everyone drafted wide receivers, I grab all the running backs and maybe even a tight end. I don't know, we'll find out, but I've become very wide receiver reverse at some point. Probably to my detriment. But again,
you're a year ahead. You're a year or two ahead, Pete. Like everyone's gonna catch up.
I'm usually too far. I'm usually so far ahead. I'm wrong. That's the problem. I'm like, by the time everyone catches up, that's when I needed to be there. I'm like, dang it. So I was actually wrong in advance. But Zach Harris inbox offer 12 team start 10 PPR Addison and the 203 for Drake London. It's tough for me. I want Addison. But London's got more value than that.
Yeah,
Are we in draft? Do we have any idea who is available at the 203? That might even swing it for me.
Well, I mean, you're
odds are
looking.
Brian Thomas hasn't, but if he fell to the 203, I'd be pretty happy.
I mean, you're looking. You could end up with Benson, either of those quarterbacks with like Nix or Penix,
Benson,
Roman Wilson,
Brooks.
Burton, all of those running backs, Corum, Lloyd, Irving, Jalen Wright, Ray Davis, like any of those. So it's really kind of a pick your poison there. I still think it's Addison for me, but I'm like notoriously down on, like I'm low on London, and I have been since he came out. And not that I think he's a bad player, I just don't think he has the ceiling of Addison. I really don't. Like, he may be a better player this year, but that's short-sighted to me.
We both want to go with Addison, although I will admit you're probably meant to be able to get more out of London than just the 203 with Addison, but we prefer Addison, so we're kind of okay with it. That's not the great, again, maybe bad business, but that's where we're going. Dame Overboard, good evening. You too, my man. Or lady, Dame. 12-team Superflex star 11, trade away Diggs and a 26-second. Cool. For Hollywood and no, Diggs.
Yeah, I'd rather have Diggs in the second.
Like, very strongly. Like, we ain't there. Again, this is the old guy discount. Like, if you want a good wide receiver and you're in a position to use one for a year, maybe two, Diggs comes at this price. Just team or wide receiver. Even Cooper Kupp's hanging out there in the 20s right now. What do you think of Scott Fish scoring announcement today? Zach, I wish I could tell you. I got back 30 minutes before the thing started, and I was not in a place to check that out. We have been told that it's been released, but that's all I know about it. I think what I think about the announcement is awesome. I love digging into that stuff. I just haven't been able to do it yet. Mouthful of gold. Which two running backs do you think could have a James Cook style breakout? You mean be a top 20 running back in points per game, but top 12 overall points? I'm just saying. Everyone wants to hate on.
I thought you don't like points per game.
Yeah, that's James. That's James Cook. I don't, unless you play a full season, which we both kind of did. What are we talking about here? A top 12 breakout, essentially. I haven't really dug into that running back, but typically, honestly, the difference with running back top 12 breakouts is they happen first year a lot. Like it's the only position. I can look at my Twitter thread, and that might give me some ideas. Zach, top 12 breakouts for running backs this year. Who you got?
I mean, I don't know that there is a top 12. I mean, like, I guess that your potentials are somebody like Spears, obviously, where he has potential to take over that backfield, although I think it's a split with Pollard, and somebody like Chase Brown, who that's a nebulous back. Like, that's what you got to look for, is you've got to look for backfields that aren't solidified. So, like, I don't think Zach Moss is a takeover of backfield, so Chase Brown has a chance. I don't necessarily think that Tony Ballard is a takeover of backfield, so Tyjae Spears has a chance. So that's what you're looking for. I mean, I guess if Kamara went down, Kendre Miller kind of has that potential, but like, there's no way he is usurping enough touches from a healthy Kamara to be that guy. I think the backfield where Roschon Johnson is in Chicago is now really muddy, and that's not a great thing for him, where Roschon was the number 2 option last year, and they also added DeAndre Swift. So it's like you're going to either have to have an injury or a nebulous situation. So to me, it's the easiest one is probably Chase Brown, Spears. A couple of I don't think Evan Hall gets there. I don't think Zach Evans gets there. It seems really unlikely. Even Charbonnet, who's a good player, is in that backfield with Kenneth Walker, who I prefer Charbonnet to Walker, but they're going to use both of them. So it's an interesting. It's a tough thing. There aren't a lot of running backs who make that jump in year 2, because most of the time, if you're getting up into the top 12 or top 20, it's because you have volume.
Damn it.
Peter died.
I nearly found it in time.
I could have kept going.
I recently tweeted my breakout thread, and I've got to update the link in my DM to myself. Breakout years at tight end. That's not going to be helpful right here. Yeah, I'm about to break down all the positions in terms of breakout trends that are heading into 2024. Unfortunately, I'm not up to date. I haven't got to running back just yet, so I don't have a lot of hot takeaways. But I will say that running backs do tend to break out earlier and often, especially for a full season. So you're looking mostly at first and second year guys. It tends to be where you look for them, which is kind of why we've both been mentioning the sophomore disappointing running backs from last year. There was a whole cluster of them in the second round last year that we liked, from Tank Bigsby. We like Tank Dell. Who else was there? Tank Bigsby, and the other guy also fell in behind someone else. My mind's going. Sorry. Zach, no, nothing.
I don't know who you're like.
Second
I
year
don't know who
running
you're.
backs.
Roshan Johnson, Charbonnet,
Roshan was
Andre
on
Miller.
Charbonnet was the other one we mentioned a lot.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of Andre Miller. He don't catch the ball, but yeah, that kind of tier of running backs from last year is where my mind initially goes to. We had a lot of breakouts this year. That's why I'm hesitating, because I suspect there might be some interesting breakout trends. It is interesting. I've seen a few questions on breakouts of Struggle Year 1, the Elite 2020 draft class, baby. Sorry, I'm reading my own tweets. This is bad. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I got nothing for you, man. Full of gold. Sorry. Usually I'm pretty good on breakouts, but I'm not there yet. I was debating Jonathan Taylor or George Kittle in round 5.
You want to be sad, Genji? In a 1.75 tight end premium last year, George Kittle would have been the running back 6. Like tight end premium with the top tight ends who get 120, 130, 140 targets, it matters a lot. So you add in another 0.25 points, and all of a sudden that just bumps him up even further. Like tight ends, those tight ends make such a difference, at least to me. So like Hawkinson, Kelsey, Laporta, Ingram, Kittle. I mean, Njoku last year, he may not be up there, and McBride. Like those players make such a difference. And the closer you get to the top in a tight end, and again, we're talking tight end premium, like uber premium. Like this is not like, hey, we're adding a half point, because that doesn't really move the needle. But once you get up to like 0.75 or a full point above what you're getting for a wide receiver, like all of a sudden those top tight ends that see volume matter a lot.
I have been, and where I say typically I'll emphasize tight ends with elite upside, and George Kittle is one of them. The only reason I'm hesitating is, one, I think Taylor goes above Kittle pretty consistently, so I can expect to try and get Kittle later. But he is a 5th round guy. Taylor falling to the 5th is interesting. The other one is Graham Barfold put something out the other day that was good enough. It made me want to go reconsider my Kittle position, which is all in on Kittle every year. And I haven't done that yet. So that's the thing that's making me hesitate. Usually what I come up with, last year he was a little touchdown dependent, however, apparently was one of the things Barfield was pointing out. But Kittle's one of the few in the league that's had like top 108 flex points per game. Like there's 5 in the league, and 2 of them are basically retired. One's Zach Ertz, for goodness sake. And then there's Kelsey for multiple years. He's actually had a top 36 year. And Kittle has had multiple top 108 years, which is infinitely flexible in most leagues, which is why I'm using that boundary. In a 12-team league, that's most teams should be starting him as a flex, if not your tight end most weeks. And the last 2 years have been below that, but he's still had pretty close or at 12 points per game, which is a rare breed for a tight end. Like Kittle's been solid even when he's disappointing, and he's one of the few with multiple years of that flex appeal. Like he's had more than Mark Andrews. I hate to mention that in front of Zach because he's about to get real mad at me. But not for the last 2 years. And I kind of like that as a discount window. Like I liked it last year, I liked it this year. Having said that, positionally, Jonathan Taylor in the 5th has almost as much advantage, but for the running back position, because he has that top 5, not top 6, running back upside. Dynasty-wise, I do lean towards tight ends. They play longer, their value is a little underrated, and it constantly gives you that potential edge at that position, whereas running back value arcs are much more, like Taylor's already going through it, it's much more volatile and much more depressing over time, where you just end up rostering them because no one gives you the value. So I lean Kittle for my own teams, but I think Taylor in the 5th is a really solid pick as well. And so what I'm coming out to is how do you want to build your team? It's kind of the answer there for me. I would lean Kittle, but I build my team specific ways that try to account for that kind of value decision. But it is a decision. And if your team is more traditionally built, then Taylor's not only a solid pick, but a great pick in the 5th. Sorry, that's the best I can do. And Kenneth Walker or Jaden Reed in round 7. See, this is why I keep hesitating on the Walker thing. We both don't expect him to start catching passes, but he's a good runner who's going to get running volume. And there's not a lot of those under the age of 50 in the NFL right now. And Jaden Reed's a really interesting wide receiver, but I'm a wide receiver reverse outside of the what I consider more elite tiers these days because of the way the dynasty landscape is, and I think we're in a bubble. So Walker's really interesting to me there. So I think I'll default to Zach here. Like, am I too low on wide receivers to think Walker's a good pick there?
No, I mean, I think I'd rather have Walker, but it's not like whatever. It's
okay.
I don't think Walker. I think Walker's probably like a 13, 14 point a game, maybe 50. Like it's not a difference maker, but I don't think Jaden Reed is even that. They schemed him some touchdowns and it was nice and that's fine. I'd rather have Jaden Reed than anybody else probably in the Green Bay offense other than the running backs at this point. But I don't know. I mean, I guess it's close, but I struggle to see. I struggle to see a world where Jaden Reed is as consistent and puts up the points that Walker does, and Walker's kind of gross. So, I don't know.
People are really high
maybe it's
on the
close.
Green Bay offense. That's partly what
maybe,
it is, and we're not.
You know what? Maybe it's. Okay. No, I revised my statement, Genji. I would rather have Jaden Reed. And I'll tell you why.
Because of how you play Dynasty.
Exactly. Because I would rather have the wide receiver. And I think that you're going to see hype build during this offseason for Jaden Reed. Peter, you mentioned people are talking about Jordan Love as a top 2 quarterback. You're going to have somebody, whether it's J.J. Zacharyson, whether it's Matt Harmon, somebody big is going to come out and say Jaden Reed is the guy tied to Jordan Love, who is the guy. And so I think you're going to get at least a value bump with that, if not production.
See, I mentioned Reed as a sleeper in last year's draft. I liked his profile enough to be in that camp, but I feel like he done woke up. Like this is a cool window for those who managed to snag him last year. I don't want to go on that roller coaster again. Like I think the solid. What is Kenneth Walker? He's a nice, calm tour. Train around the outsides of the theme park. Like it's very nice. You're going to see everything and you'll have a perfectly pleasant time. Whereas Reed's going to be a freaking dangerous roller coaster and you could just throw up.
Ken Walker, monorail.
And I think that's a really smart way of answering it. That is kind of how you play Dynasty. You're going to look for that window. I try those, like I was saying earlier. I'm always looking for them, but I'm not as consistently good at it. So, like, especially with a draft decision, I'm like, I'll probably just take Walker. But again, kind of goes to how you want to play it. Like, if you're willing to go in on those windows, play it like Zach. Sorry, my dehumidifier just decided it's full. Reed maybe. But I would just take the more solid bet. Frank in the chat, SFB scoring isn't totally locked in yet. Oh, isn't it? Oh, he teased some of it today, but he's tweaking numbers as of this posting. Oh, okay, that's good enough. But the big one was returners get big points. Traylon Burks has value again.
Burks is back. Justin Fields. Here we go.
Back in. If you don't already, you should check out Adam Harstead. He's been playing return leagues since they embedded him, and he always mentions returning yard points. So he's like got an edge. Not that he normally doesn't, but especially on that, his research is he's already paying attention to that. So Adam's going to be an interesting one for the Scott Fishbowl scoring, apparently. So we should prepare for Greg Deluche breakout post-out sleeper. I think he's a reasonable bet at current value, which is a boring way of saying, yeah, I put him in a trade. I did. The trade was about something else, but I thought tight end could use some bolstering. We were really excited about him coming in after his rookie season last year, or some of us were. His ADP was enough that I think other people were as well. And he just missed his second year, which happens because of injury. Injury isn't an excuse for wide receivers, but tight ends tend to take a little bit of a weirder path. And all the things that were true about his rookie season are still true. All the things that were true about the player are still true. And I think there was reason to suspect Dolchich was capable. And instead, he's going to try this year instead of last year. But you're getting a little bit of a value segue because of the missed year. I kind of like that idea. Yeah. But again, it's like I would go for Jake Ferguson first because he actually did something last year, also entering his third year. And he's on an interesting team. But Dolchich is on the if I'm looking to bolster the back end of that title, I think he's a really interesting roster. Yeah. 12-team start 10 Dynasty Superflex PPR. Last year's champ was stacked team. Would you have CMC and Tyreek or Bijan and Addison?
CMC and Tyreek.
Yeah.
Even though Bijan and Addison is the Dynasty play, let's keep winning.
This is like 100 times out of 100, despite the fact that some teams could be building, because in season it'll be easier to trade CMC and Tyreek from better. And so even if I'm building, I'm like, I'll wait till season before I trade for Addison, and I'll get a lot more on top of Addison for Tyreek at that time. That's
more than kind of the way. I mean, yeah, but yeah, Bijan is Bijan's a nice piece. Like I want Bijan, but I don't think CMC and Bijan are that far off in dynasty value, or they shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be too far off.
Because there are three phases of value, and we're still dreaming on Bijan, and we're like, we know what CMC is. I don't think we have completely grasped what CMC is. Like, he is so far above and beyond what all of the other running backs that you could roster are in terms of points that, like, I'm going to. Huh?
We forget. We think this is one of the reasons me and Zach simpatico a lot. We rank preference, what we want, what we would do. The reason I have CMC, I'm assuming you do too, above in if you were to do ranks, is partly because a lot of teams are going to prefer Bijan Robinson because it's dynasty and because of age. And honestly, Bijan has that ceiling. It's really hard to hit that ceiling, even when you have that ceiling. There's literally only one, Christian McCaffrey so far. Like that's how rare it is. So we would preference CMC with the idea that he doesn't cost as much. He is ranked low by more people than he is ranked higher than it. Like, we're win orientated. So who would I rather roster? Probably Bijan Robinson, because I think I can trade him for CMC with a plus, and whatever that plus is just extra juice, right?
Right, but giving
Addison is decently far off Tyreek, though. That's the problem.
But get like so you would like to have Bijan so you could trade him for CMC plus, but if you're giving up CMC to get B, so like you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like
that's
you're
the
not.
thing. So we
Yeah.
land on the CMC Tyreek side,
Yep.
but the answer should include if you have Bijan Robinson, you have more in most leagues to most other teams. So don't do
Absolutely.
that even. Yeah,
Yeah.
that I just like sometimes I forget I did a whole ranking of the Explain series and it really helped me figure out why some of my ranks were weird. And some people didn't like them because they kept making mistakes with them. And part of it is that like I rank CMC higher not because he's better, and like Zach was saying about dreaming on, but because I can get CMC plus for Bajon in a lot of instances, and that's really interesting to me in Dynasty because value versus points per game balance is interesting. Where it's a whole game. But yeah, if I'm rostering CMC and Tyreek, I don't trade it straight up for Bajon and Addison. But if you have Bajon and Addison, to more people in more leagues, you probably have a little bit more value there to work with. So yeah, that's the full answer, I guess. Thanks. Haha. You're welcome. Sup, boys? Buy and sell you. Appreciate it. Scribbles, is it possible Marcus Brown leads the Chiefs wide receivers in fantasy points this year? Yes. I don't think that's the more likely outcome, as much as I'd love to say it, because I think they clearly got Marcus Brown as a relatively cheap veteran ad that does a lot of the stuff that they need to replace with the loss of Tyreek Hill very well. But they want it to be Rashee Rice. And their team in general is not squeamish of a lot worse legal troubles. So I think the expectation is it's Rice, who's going to be the majority of that wide receiver room. And the full answer is it's still Kelsey, my guys. It's still Kelsey is part of the receiving offense of the Chiefs that you want. Rice is interesting. Marcus Brown is really relatively cheap, apart from that one trade we just saw. Way into it, and we know he's talented, veteran or not, aged out, lost all value or not. He's always been a little undervalued for me. But he kind of has a pretty steep top 24 ceiling, even in the years he's been good. He was on a top 12 pace once or twice, but he's always capped out at 24, inside the top 24. Whereas Rice still has some of that, yeah, maybe. But the real answer is Kelsey, just to be clear. Zach will chime in if I ever miss anything, which I do frequently. But I think I annoy him by constantly saying, "Hey, Zach, got something to say about that?" So I'm just going to move on. Dave, you put up a challenge this week. I'm game. Party hat guy, heart, football, goat. I didn't think I knew that one, did you? Purple speaking guy, definitely a shouting guy, I think. Muscle flex, okay sign. What's that? Fine? The fine symbol?
That might be the
maybe?
Chef's kiss. I don't know.
Chef's kiss, and that like devil
depends
horns.
on where you get it. Could be. I mean, we could. They could be fighting words here too.
So true. Thumb up symbol, fire symbol, sun symbol, panda, monkey, boat. I'm gonna say boat. I'm going with boat. Cherry, chili, lemon, green square, lemon. I like the repeat of lemon, by the way. Different kind of boat. I'm going to say ship. Statue of Liberty. Football. That's the comedy and drama symbol. That's interesting. Flying off super guy. That's what I see. I see a superhero. Then there's like a little cat. Then a bell. Then a lock symbol. Heart, $sign, tick, too easy. Purple heart symbol, followed by, I don't know the name for that, but it's a music symbol that
like
goes at the start. It's a treble clef, right? It goes at the start of music notes. You play music. I don't. I'm not meant to do it.
I don't read music, though.
I feel like I hit a clean 70% on that. Toronto Dave.
You're going to have to come back and pay us another $50 to get your driver's license, though.
Buy and sell you. Ask his feet.
Is this a Rex Ryan? What are we doing?
We were talking about someone at the time, but we're so slow. It's difficult. Brock Bowers of Devontae in a 12-team 1.5 tight end premium. Devontae's undervalued. It's pretty close.
It's just because I've seen it. It's nothing against Bowers, but like Bowers is like if he's Kelsey, then you lose. If he's any other tight end except for Kelsey, then it's you either win or it's a push. So I'll take that bet.
I tell you a stupid trade I just did. I was in a draft and Brock Bowers was falling, so it was just a regular league. No overthinking here. He is at the 108, and I had the 112, so I added Kincaid to the 112. I got Bowers. It's actually a really bad trade, but I was like, I just want to get Bowers. It's probably going to fall to me at 112. To be honest,
it's a really funny trade. I like that.
It felt stupid at the time. I was like, I'm definitely doing this, and it's definitely going to be accepted. It's rare you send an offer and you're like, that one's definitely going to be accepted, and you still feel good about it. It's Devontae. Is Jerome Ford a sneaky ad right now? All running backs, pretty much, if they're waiver variable. But yeah, Jerome Ford, it definitely is. Yeah. How do you all think this Superflex drama turns out? Ayuk gets extension. Oh, San Francisco drama. Fantasy brain. Turns out Ayuk gets extension. Debo traded.
CMC gets extension. That's all.
I think he already did, didn't he?
Like yesterday. Yeah. Well, he got a second. Like he got the long-term contract when he got traded, and then got an extra, like 2 days ago. So
honestly, again, not to astral project your point here, but I think once again, fantasy completely misunderstands this wide receiver room. The fact that it's a conflict is because Ayuk is good with Debo.
Good, yeah.
Without Debo, I know you can points per game split it. I think Debo adds to this offense, and when he's not around, Kittle provides some of that.
The rising,
but guy. I think without Debo, Ayuk is worse. Like that's what I think, and I think the fact that there is drama should tell you that San Francisco think that too. Like that's the problem, and so if you want to de-fantasy brain yourself, you're like, I'm not excited about Ayuk being unleashed from the lack of Debo. Like that's a bad thing. Man, that's my takeaway. Frank in the chat creates a Levis Cannon Believers Club. I think it's part of one. I think there's a club. I think there's a train. I think there's a hype train, and when people
they meet on Thursday afternoon. There's a table at the back with coffee and mayonnaise.
Bring your own pie. I don't know. Yeah. I thought Levis would be more of a rushing threat, but that aspect of his game has been disappointing.
Hold on.
He wasn't a rusher.
I hold on. I want to Google this because you need to hear this. Will Levis.
We'll wait.
College.
Me in the chat will just hang out.
Will Levis. Hold on. Will Levis college stats. Are you ready for this? And I understand that college stats count sacks as negative rushing yards. But Will Levis, his last year at Kentucky, ran 72 times for negative 107 yards. This man is not a running quarterback. He never has been a running quarterback. That's not what Will Levis does. His best season he ran for 3.5 yards a carry as a quarterback. He's not a mobile quarterback. That's not what he does. You're muted, but you look good.
One of the best things in Dynasty is when Dynasty as a group gets a thing in their mind that's literally the exact opposite of the truth. And you have to defend yourself from literally just saying, look, the exact opposite is true. And occasionally, it's actually pretty rare. It's like CJ Stroud isn't a rusher, and Travis May's just out here like literally his first touch in a college game was like an 80-yard touchdown run. What is everyone talking about? Like he can run. He's not Lamar, but he runs pretty good too. Like the opposite is true as Levis. Somehow it got into the idea that Levis is a cannon and he runs, and it's like,
well, because everyone wants him to be Josh Allen, and he's not. Yes. It was like Dwayne Haskins coming out and Stephen A. Smith being like, well, he's a rushing quarterback. I'm like, whoa, no, he's not.
I remember a similar thing with Odell Beckham, and believe it or not, this was a thing for a second when in his rookie year to start the season before the catch, he started to get some play and scored some touchdowns, and he was called just a red zone threat. Like that got into the fantasy diaspora where this relatively smaller, fast guy with a high level receiving college production was a red zone threat. Like he was a 6'3" jump ball guy. It was like, wait, what are you all doing right now? It's the first time I ever encountered it. And it was just this completely, even to your own narratives, untrue thing that everyone just kind of thought was true. And we're like, what? Whenever you pointed out that it exactly wasn't. And it just happens occasionally, and it's fantastic. Well, it's a good thing Taylor is top 5.
He's saying because Kittle finished as a top 6, but he wasn't. And whatever. He's fine.
Just wanted to give my appreciation for the grind. Good night, everyone. Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate it. Lean running back for scarcity. Figured I can move them for whatever. In season, it's easier to trade running backs. It's just, because people are like, oh, wait, I need some of those. But do remember you have a smaller market for them even in season. So consider what the market will be. Look at those teams. If they have no draft capital left, you're not going to be trading for draft capital, for example. And again, because of the smaller market, they can hold you to a nastier value. It is easier. I think you get better trades in season, but it's not always in every league. Oh, easy win. I know where Dynasty content is very fond of suggesting, here's an easy win, just do this consistently. But there are always, like, you try and do that in your league, and then there are only 3 teams that are really competitive. They have no first, and they're not willing to give you a young wide receiver. And you're like, well, shoot. And so, check out those teams and be aware of that. It's something I try to do too. You can not do it. It's fine. Enter the power of 4. 12 teams who flex. Start 10 with 1 point tight end premium. Bijan, Taylor, or Taylor and Hawkinson. Hawkinson's a hot button for me right now. I think it's Bijan, personally.
Yeah, I mean, that was close, but it's probably Bijan. You probably get more for Bijan later, but I'm still like, I think Taylor, like, and we did this like a year and a half, 2 years ago, where like I am out on the like running backs that are like high end, 2 years, 3 at max. I'm trading them for young, proven wide receivers. So you could have gotten out of Taylor and gotten St. Brown. You could have gotten, whoever you wanted, whichever young wide receiver you wanted.
CD Lamb at the time was
CD Lamb, AJ Brown, whatever you wanted. And that's what I want to do that. I want to, like, right now it's like Breece Hall. And Breece Hall has been fantastic.
We love
Breece Hall. He's been in the league a couple years, and either right now or after this year, I'm trading Breece Hall, and that's how I play Dynasty. Is I'm going to take the running back and use them for my run, my championship push, and then trade them for young, proven wide receivers and a pick, so I can re-rack running backs. Like, that is just how I play, and this is actually a really good year to do that, because I think next year has a bunch of running backs in the class.
You had me at tight end. Did I have you at tight end, or did I have you at no, forget it. Thanks, Bob. Into the power 4. There's one edge left I see people ignoring, really leaning into a format. Yeah, I mean, that's often a really good way to go. Again, to your point, 2 point tight end premium with 3 flex spots. I'm going to go into my startup and try to get one stud
quarterback, and then 4 any tight ends you can get. Yes, no, that's literally how I have played Russ's leagues. So Dynasty Outhouse runs the Trade Addicts leagues. It's 1.75 tight end premium. I won TA11. I started off the draft with Josh Allen, and then ended up My rosters are a little bit different now because I made a few trades because Mark Andrews got hurt. But like it's Kelsey, it's Kittle, it's Andrews, it's whatever you have for those top tier tight ends, and that's how I play that because you can actually flex in a tight end. You can super flex in a tight end and be better off than having your quarterback there. So
Philip J. Fry, inbox offer, give Puka and DJ Moore, receive CD Lamb. That's a DJ Moore heavy. This is kind of an even swap, but I do prefer CD Lamb. DJ Moore is a little bit of a heavy price to pay for it, but I want CD Lamb.
Yeah, I still think I'd take CD, but that's pretty fair. I just normally I'm trying to consolidate.
That's fair.
And I think CD Lamb is better than either of those players. If you look at your roster and you're like, I need more starters, then yeah, then keep the two. But with this, especially with this roster, you'd be starting St. Brown, CD Lamb, Tyreek Hill. That's not too bad. Yeah. What are we starting? Start 10. So yeah, like I want the hammers. I want the guys who are putting up the points advantage, and I still think CeeDee Lamb does that.
And he certainly did last year. Can't break out in 30%. Remember, he couldn't break out in the third year because he hadn't hit 20% target share yet. I had fun that offseason. I had a lot of fun pointing out that was wrong, and I had a lot of fun trading for CeeDee Lamb that year. I missed that year. How many leagues do you guys play in, and how did you get in them? It's a good question. I've actually consistently tried to consolidate because I started at like 50 when I first got into Dynasty, and I hate leaving leagues, but slowly whittled. It really helped out when I moved to mainly MFL because that's where old people like Zach that I ended up running into and enjoying spending time and wanted to play together. Tend to play. I'm in 5-6 leagues if you include the 2 sleeper leagues, which I don't, so 4. But my sleeper leagues, that's where my patrons wanted to play because they hate me. So we did that, and then Matt Spencer, who I'm a huge fan of. If you don't know him, he's not a big content creator guy or anything, but he's a whiz with statistics, data gathering, and coding and stuff, and I really like him. And he invited me to a league, and I didn't want to say no. I'd love the chance to play with Matt, and that's mostly how I end up in leagues. It's who is asking who is in it. I'm fortunate enough; I've met enough people that play now that occasionally they start a league, and I want to play with those people or that person. Unfortunately, the one thing that keeps happening to me, the way it expands, is John Bosch will start another creative league. And I really like John, and I really want to play with John. A lot of the people that sign up for John's leagues, and I always get into it. I'm like, okay, I'm really going to study and understand this league. And then 3 weeks in, I'm like, John, I'm probably leaving this one at the end of the season as well. But I do want to be in a league with John that doesn't drive me batty. I'm a very vanilla league kind of a guy. And John's like, I've just come up with this great idea. And they are great ideas, but I just can't keep up. And I need to know everything, or know what I know at least about fantasy as soon as I log into the league. I don't have to remember a whole bunch of stuff that isn't true in any other league. I don't like that. But yeah, that's how I end up in them mostly these days. And I actually think that's a fortunate privilege thing. So I can remember not being in that situation. And it's rough, man. I used to just toll. I don't know. Search on Flea Flicker looking for open vacancies or starting leagues with people that you didn't know. Scroll's probably the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
but it doesn't feel quite right.
That's alliteration, but that's assonance, not consonants.
There you go. If you're looking to get into that, engaging in the community helps. Fantasy. I mean, one of the unknown, or I think least often mentioned aspect of Fantasy Cares and getting involved in Scott Fishbowl and going to the events or going to even the expo, like I went once, meeting people. just talking and having fun and doing the nice running, you bump into people and you find people that you connect with and you like, and you just enjoy talking fantasy with them, and they end up in a league or starting a league, and that's kind of how you get there. So you're doing the right thing. Hang out with Dynasty Outhouse on Twitter long enough, you'll find a good league with people that you want to play in.
Well, and that's it. I think that's the real crux is, and it's not really a secret, but like the secret is there's a really good Dynasty community on Twitter. And if you just go in,
the rest
and
maybe hellscape, but the Dynasty community is pretty cool.
and like if you get in and are active and interact, because that's the other interesting thing and the fun thing, and it's also the double-edged sword. It was what makes social media so terrible, but it's what makes the Dynasty community on Twitter so wonderful. Is people will interact with you. And so like when I first started back, I mean, you're talking 2014, 2015, I would be interacting with JJ Zacharyson and Scott Fish and Matthew Berry and Ryan McDowell. And eventually, and at that point, it was like Carl Safchik was doing the DLF stream and I mean, the DLF pod. And so I'm interacting with all these people and they're talking back at me like I'm somebody with information that's worth
somebody
talking. And I think that's really how the community is, and that to me is how you get in leagues. It's how you find really great people and people that you want to play in leagues. Most of my leagues are Russ Fisher will say, hey, I'm starting a league, and I'll say, great, who's in it? And then he gives me a list of people who are in it, and I'm like, yep, or maybe the next one, whatever. And so like that, like I only now, when I first started, I played in tons of leagues. I play in 16 or 17 leagues. I was actively trying to win money. You should go listen to the Trade Addicts podcast that Russ and I did last week. It was just the two of us. And we talked at length about this sort of thing. But like I started off where I had my home league, and then we got into doing the podcast content creation, and I was like, I can win money doing this. And so I got in a bunch of leagues, and I was making enough where my job has a shutdown over the week of Christmas and the week of New Year's. So like there's no work, and so you don't get paid. And I was making enough money that the payouts would come Christmas week for fantasy football because they didn't have the extra week in the NFL season. And I was making more than my paycheck from fantasy football. And that was awesome. And then I realized that was a lot of work and it wasn't as much fun as I thought it was. And so I started getting in leagues with people that I enjoyed to be in and cut my leagues way back. And so like both of those are good ways to do it. I think I'm in 4 leagues right now. I really want to have a 5th. I like to have 5 dynasty leagues. It kind of rounds things out, but like it's really get involved in the community, find good groups of people. I mean, we just did a Rate My League show last night that was 14 people who came together in on Twitter in 2020 and put together this dynasty league that is awesome. And that is the easiest way, probably the best way to do it is interact and get a group of people and start a league.
Yeah, if the question is like, how do I find good leagues? Because I get that one occasionally. I got a few things that I say. One is play everything. Find out what you enjoy. I enjoy vanilla, it turns out. Like I've tried some crazy stuff. You might enjoy IDP. It's fascinating stuff. Lots of fascinating stuff out there. Try everything, play it, see if you enjoy it. Second one is literally, well, it's like what you were saying about the community in general. You know how you get JJ Zacharyson on your podcast? You have a podcast and you ask him. Like that seems rare and pretty cool. And that's kind of the whole community. You just talk to him. And stuff like that. And it's the same with leagues. The other thing outside, I think a lot of people, even I, end up thinking platforms. I want another MFL league so that Dynasty Planet brings all of my players together. I don't want to have multiple platforms. I don't like more than one thing. I want one bank card. I don't want 7. That kind of thing. It just tends to be how I think. So people think platforms. Do I play the FFPC to win money? Do I play on Sleeper? Do I play on MFL? I would encourage you increasingly to think, one, who's in the league, like Zach was just saying. That's the third thing. But the second thing, which I think is sometimes underrated, is look for commissioners. Dynasty Outhouse, there's a reason we're all in his leagues and love being in one. He's a fantastic commissioner. Don't tell him because he's already running too many leagues. Like, don't stress him out about it. But it does stress him out. But he's a fantastic commissioner. John Bosch, for all the crazy league settings, and if you're into that, he's your guy. But he is a magnificent. Don't tell him I said that. I've got to pretend I'm running a hate you thing going with him. Don't ruin this for me. But he is a magnificent commissioner. Scott Fish, I don't know how much of it he does anymore, but he's a great commissioner, if nothing else, and he's many other things. So go looking for the commissioners in your community, in the people that you like talking to. Don't think famous necessarily. Just look for commissioners, and when they start leagues, you get interesting. Who's in that league? What format is it? Is it kind of format I like? I'm in. And that has done wonders to my Dynasty life, just having good commissioners that just are great at that. And it's not just payouts or organization, which is a lot of it. It's just trust, and also the way they keep the league fun and the way they keep everyone in it engaged. There's a lot of different things of being a good commissioner. Resolving problems in a fair manner turns out to be pretty awkward for some people, and good commissioners have learned to be, or just are good at that. And so I think that maybe the one I say the least, that's probably just as important as anything else about finding good leagues. Who's in it, but also who's running it. If you have that luxury, find a good commissioner and you're set. Yeah. And holy cow, get it? Because
we did it. We're there.
Yeah.
We
off-season grinds got a earlier. Yeah.
We'll take it. Look over there.